Hey guys and gals, this is Brent, just chiming in with a few thoughts that I've got this morning. This is Sunday, 23rd or 24th of August, 2020. So, on my last video, I talked a little bit about staying solo or either hiring someone if you're self-employed. I want to expound on that a little bit, and because it's really weighing heavily on my mind lately, and the notion of hiring someone is no small decision. Right now I have a fellow that's working with me about 10 or 15 hours a week. Great guy, but he's got a full-time job, and I'm kind of have to work around his schedule. So it's inconvenient, but I'm willing to do it just simply because he's a great guy. But I'm paying him good too now. So I'm not really making that much money off of him, honestly. He's just kind of taking some of the workload off of me. And it just by having him gives me the option of using him when I'm in a bind and I still have to get the work done type of thing. Anyway, there's reasons why I'm paying him such a good rate. And if I were to actually hire a full-time helper, it would be more along the lines of like $10 an hour is probably what I'd pay a ride-along helper, for what I want him to do, Anyway, I'll get into a little bit some more specifics on that side of things a little bit later, maybe in another video, as far as how much to pay someone like that, versus if you were going to actually have someone basically run your rig for you. Anyway, so for those of you who do not know, I do lawn care and pressure washing. 90% lawn care, 10% pressure washing. I want to make the shift into pressure washing because it's more profitable. So here's my thought. My thought is to make yourself the most efficient as possible while you're solo. And there's no need to hire someone and pay them and take on all the responsibility and aggravation of having an employee and achieve the same results if you could spend the same amount of money that you could with that employee for the year and spend it in other ways to make yourself more efficient. And I'm going to give you two solid examples. Let's go with lawn care first. In my example, to make my comparison, we're going to say that I use the rate of $800 a month that I'd pay a helper. Maybe that's just a part-time helper. $10 an hour. Doing some quick math in my head, if I'm doing it right, if I pay him $800 a month, that's going to be for 80 hours. So that's 20 hours a week. Some weeks might be heavier, whatever. But for my example, I'm going to say we're going to pay a part-time helper $800 a month. I'm going to use them 10 months out of the year, so that's $8,000. For the year, going $800 a month times 10 is 8,000. Okay, well, so in my proposal, I'm saying, at least for right now, let's use that $8,000 that we would pay a part-time helper and use it to make me more efficient in what I'm doing. And you could do that in a couple of ways, but in this example, I'm going to use the analogy of something that you probably haven't seen too much of, depending upon the area that you're in, but robotic mowers. It's a controversial topic. But I do think it's the wave of the future, for a lot of different reasons. One of which, robotic mowing is more, green, and a lot of people, like it or not, we're going to be shifting into, less, what I'm trying to say. There's going to be a shift from using mowers with engines on it, just like cars. Cars have gone through the last 30 years of emission standards and stuff like that, where the emissions are getting tighter and tighter and tighter. They haven't been doing that with mowers just yet. They have to an extent, but it's going to get a lot tighter and a lot tougher. So the shift is going to be towards electric mowers, if nothing else. So you can have electric mowers without being robotic. But anyway, I digress. I go off on tangents sometimes. Point being, let's get back to the topic at hand. You could take the $8,000 that you're going to pay an employee for the year. Robotic mowers cost you about $1,000 a piece. You can look them up on Amazon. There's one up there by the company called Worx, WORX, I think. Anyway, they're about $1,000 a piece. Let's say you buy 8 of them, and you pick 8 yards. Like, give you an example, the customers that I take care of, I probably have 45 customers, maybe, give or take. It varies. Pick up some, drop off some. But let's just say that you pick 8 yards, and you ask the customer, of course, if they don't mind you setting up a robotic mower in their yard. You charge them the same thing as you would over the course of a year. You still have to go there once a week to do your trimming and edging and blowing. But it has so many benefits by going this route. Number one, you don't have to have a daggone employee that's going to disappoint you. Number two, from the customer standpoint, it's going to be a benefit because the yard is going to be cut all the time. At the end of the week where you're supposed to show up, where it's looking shaggy, it's still going to look nice and trim. I mean, you're still going to have to show up and do the trim and edge and blowing, and getting the weeds out of the bed if you do that. Spraying Roundup. That's what I do. So you're still going to have to show up to still provide that service. You're still going to have to go there. But the benefit for them is their yard looks nice and tight all the time for the most part. And number two, the benefit for me, or for you, lawn care provider, is that you never have to worry about tracking up a customer's yard when the ground is a little wet. Because these robotic mowers, they cut about every other day, or every day you can do it, set it up. They won't cut the grass if it's wet because they have rain sensors. Another advantage is this more green. You can tell that to the customer. They're doing a service to the environment, all that jazz. So, and depending upon where you live, that's going to be a big seller to them. So that is analogy number one. I could go through the other benefits, but if you're going to if you have $8,000 laying on your table in front of you, and you say, okay, I want to take this $8,000 and I want to lessen my burden, for this coming year in the lawn care industry, my yards. I want to spend this $8,000 and I want some help on my 45 yards that I'm doing. I think a good option is to say, okay, I'm going to take this $8,000, I'm going to buy 8 robotic mowers, and in 8 of my yards, which is, I don't know, my math is not that great right now. I'm trying to do a recording, but maybe that's 25% of your workload, not quite, maybe 20%. In those 8 yards, which is for me is a good day's worth of work if I'm working by myself. If I do 8 yards in a day, that's really all I do, unless I'm rushing trying to kill it. For one solid day, I've got some good help there, and all I got to do is show up and do the trim work, edging, blowing, all this, and I don't have to worry. If it rains on that particular route, I still can go do most of the work I need to do. Because I can still trim and edge, when the ground's wet, no problem, and blow it off and all that good stuff, and versus hiring an employee and having them disappoint you. I don't know. It's just, to me, it seems a lot. Seems like a lot of good sense. It seems like it makes sense to use to entertain the thought of robotic mowers. And then the other analogy I'll give you on the pressure washing side of things is, say you want to use that $8,000, same scenario. You want some help on your pressure washing. Well, the machine that I use currently is a 4-gallon a minute machine. You can go to Home Depot and order one, and it costs about $1,000. So that's a Simpson machine, 4,000 psi, 4 gallons per minute. And you can only wash just so fast with those machines. They do the job very well, especially for a beginner's unit. But for a unit such as a professional's use, like an 8-gallon a minute machine, it only cleans about half as fast. So scenario number 2, we're switching over to pressure washing in this example. Okay, I'm working solo. I have $8,000 sitting in front of me. What do I want to do? Do I want to hire a helper that's going to help me, go around and help me do the jobs faster? Or would I invest in a 8-gallon a minute machine that does the work a lot faster? And the net result is the same, and the aggravation is lessened because you're not dealing with an employee. The disadvantage to both of these examples that I just give you, using robotic mowers or using a bigger 8-gallon a minute machine pressure washing, is the fact that if you decide you want to hire a helper, well, you only have to trickle that $8,000 away from yourself towards them throughout the course of the year. Whereas if you say, for instance, you want to buy some equipment, well, then you got to put that money up front. And I'm not going to advocate you going into debt to buy anything. You can get in trouble real fast. There's some people who say debt's fine. I don't use debt for equipment, so you can get in trouble really fast. That's a topic for another day. So that's the only disadvantage, is that you have to let go of a large sum of money quicker, like on the spot, to go the equipment route versus hiring an employee. However, you can go halfway in between. You can say, okay, well, instead of buying 8 robotic mowers, I'm going to buy 4 or 2, and start small and then work your way up if you see that it's working good for you. You certainly don't have to buy 8 robotic mowers at the same time. The 8-gallon a minute machine for pressure washing in my example is a little bit different. You can go midway and say, okay, let's buy a 5.5 gallon, because you can get them in, and I don't expect you to know a whole lot about the pressure washing machines. You may know a whole lot more than I do, but I'm assuming that you know a little bit about them. But so the entry level commercial pressure washer is a 4 gallon a minute. Then you have a 5.5, and then you have an 8. That, to my knowledge, those are the 3. Now you can get like a 2.5 gallon a minute machine, and those are like your homeowner editions. So, but anyway, so instead of going like the big 8 gallon a minute machine, you could go with a 5.5 and maybe only spend $3,000, and then you can upgrade later. Anyway, without making this video any more longer than it already is, or already hitting 15 minutes, I want to tell you that I would advocate the idea of making you more efficient in your business before going the route of hiring an employee. Eventually, you're going to have to hire an employee because you can only make yourself so efficient, right? But it's that whole idea about picking the low-hanging fruit first, and then once you've picked all the low-hanging fruit that you can, then go get the ladder. So in other words, at some point, you're going to have to step up if you want your business to grow. You're going to have to hire an employee, but why do it until you got to? And it's fresh in my mind. Just a few weeks ago, I trusted a college student to meet me to help me with some work, and he never showed up. So it's just kind of fresh in my mind about hiring people. So I've had a lawn care business in the past, 20 years ago, where I've had a full-time helper, so I've had like 2 employees at one time, 2 people helping me. So I've gone the route. I know about it, and I know the aggravation of it. But anyway, that's all for today. So if you've seen the video all the way through, I'd appreciate it if you like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. It kind of helps the channel and whatnot. And my ultimate goal is to help people in my situation, because being in business is hard, man. It's I use the analogy of, you're constantly, it feels like you constantly got voltage going to you all the time, 24/7. Whereas if you're working as an employee at a job, like I did 10 years, I did a 10-year stretch, like I was in prison, a 10-year stretch at, as a service advisor at an auto dealership, and I worked 12-hour days, sometimes more than that. I'd get there at 7, and then I wouldn't leave till like 8 at night, so it's 13-hour days. But when I went home, I didn't too much have to worry about it. And on the weekends, I didn't have to worry about it because, customers don't bother you at home. So I use the analogy, I've told my wife this, it's like being in a situation like that, it's like having 100 volts hooked to you for those hours that you're there, 12, 13-hour days. And you just, being shocked, 100 volts, 120 volts. For those 12, 13 hours, and then it's cut off. Then you have no voltage going to, you can at least freaking relax, while you're at home. And then the next day you walk in there and, 100 volts, 120 volts. Like you're sticking your finger in the wall outlet. But at least it's, you're being shocked and you cut off. You're being shocked and you get cut off. You have a little bit of downtime. And when you're self-employed, like I am, you're not getting shocked that much. You're not getting 120 volts, shocked all the time, but you're getting like 50 volts. But it's constant. It's constant. Always thinking about it. This is Sunday, and I'm thinking about it. I never work on Sunday if I don't. But I'm doing paperwork, doing invoices, thinking about it, planning for it, stressing about it. So it's like having 50 volts of electricity just constantly on you all the time, just constantly there. So all that to say, business is hard, and I want to help those that are kind of in my situation. So anytime I come up with stuff like this, I'm gonna share it with you. So without further ado, that's all I'm gonna bore you with right now. Y'all have a good weekend, and we'll talk later.